President Tsai Ing-wen is facing calls to visit a controversial island in the South China Sea. A survey tallies gender equality in the workplace in Taiwan with mixed results. An environmental group accuses Taiwan's government of violating the constitution. Plus, find out how one Taiwanese-American entrepreneur is embracing the tea in Taiwan. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Kavat. Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen is facing calls to visit the country's Taiping Island, located in the South China Sea. But as Liao reports, doing so could upset the awkward balance of competing claims in the region.
This is Taiping, the largest natural island in the Spratlys, a strategically important archipelago in the South China Sea. Also known as Itu Aba, Taiping is claimed by China, Vietnam and the Philippines, but it's administered by Taiwan, whose capital, Taipei, is 1,800 kilometres away. Now, Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen is facing calls to make a controversial trip to Taiping in a show of the country's sovereignty over the island and to inaugurate its recently expanded port.
面临到国际的局势，当然会有一些紧张关系。不过，这是中华民国的既有的领土，那有重大一些工程，那我们该怎么做就怎么做。我想我们支持蔡总统做他该有的作为。
Tsai's two predecessors also visited far-flung Taiping in a similar expression of sovereignty over the 100-acre island. It is now home to a garrison of some 200 Taiwanese coast guards. But a trip by Tsai, who has only 4 months left in office, would come at a time of sky-high tensions in the South China Sea. Over the last decade, China has constructed islands in the Spratlys, building docks and airstrips in the disputed waters, and often clashing with neighbouring Philippines, which has overlapping claims.
The real controversy that makes the news these days about the Spratly archipelago centers around Beijing's desire to consolidate its claims and to make it more and more difficult for any of the other claimants to operate in that space.
But Taiwan has more complex security issues with China, which also claims sovereignty over Taiwan. It has increased military threats to take the island nation by force, sending boats and planes around Taiwan's waters. There are worries that should Beijing actually attack, an outlying island like Taiping could be a target, which is why Tsai has overseen a $50 million upgrade to the island's pier to allow larger ships to dock there.
长期的停留在太平岛的这一个码头，甚至是在太平岛周围进行巡弋，这一点其实是对于我们在伸张我们所谓的海权，或者是稳固我们海上交通线来看，都有相当重要的一个意涵。
Throughout her nearly 8 years in power, Tsai has had to defend Taiwan's sovereignty without provoking Beijing to the point of war. In her last few weeks as the country's president, the decision of whether to go to Taiping Island is a final test in her delicate balancing act. Liao and Olivia Chen for TaiwanPlus.
To find out more about why Tsai may or may not visit Taiping Island, our reporter Liao spoke to political risk analyst Ross Feingold.
Obviously, the South China Sea is an incredibly sensitive area with loads of competing claims. What is at stake here?
For Taiwan, it's the claim that Taiwan is a sovereign country, and as part of being a sovereign country, it has a claim, and in fact, it has troops and personnel on some of these islands that are quite a distance from Taiwan. So I think for Taiwan, it helps the argument to say that they're not just a breakaway province, or as some people like to say, a renegade province of China, but it's actually a country that does things that countries normally do. And that includes enforcing its territorial claims, even if the claim is some distance from Taiwan proper. So I think from that perspective, it's important for Taiwan to enforce this claim, to do what it's been doing to improve the airport or the landing runway or the pier.
Based on how we've seen Tsai act in terms of geopolitics and dealing with neighbouring China during her presidency, how do you think she will approach the possibility of visiting Taiping Island?
So if she were to make that visit, I would expect a significant reaction from China. So President Tsai might say to herself, well, why would I want to invite that kind of reaction from China? I might as well just not go. Well, the good thing is if she visits and China does engage in military exercises as a reaction, there'll be a significant support around the world for Taiwan, just as we often see. So we would hear, for example, the State Department spokesperson would criticize China's military exercises and call for de-escalation, as would probably Japan, maybe the UK, maybe some other European countries. So it's kind of a worst case scenario that she goes and then there's a significant Chinese response. In a way, it becomes a best case scenario because then you get statements of support from the United States.
Do you think it's a particularly dangerous or unstable time to be going to this part of Taiwan's territory?
We have to remember that Taiwan's claim to the island and China's claim to the island are not the only two claims. There are other competing claims. And the same thing with Taiwan's claim in the South China Sea as a whole, which is similar to China's claims, and it's in dispute with several other countries. So if President Tsai were to go, it would remind Vietnam and the Philippines that they have a competing claim. And although Taiwan and the Tsai administration has its new southbound policy, and they've tried to encourage Taiwan companies to invest more in Vietnam. And just a few weeks ago, Taiwan was thrilled with President Marcos's tweet congratulating William Liao, which he then walked back in a subsequent interview, saying that his government supports a one China policy and Taiwan is a province of China. So there's a risk of damage to Taiwan's relations with not just, or the possibility of a response from China, but there's a risk of damage to relations with Vietnam and the Philippines. So again, you have to ask, why is it really, really worth it to risk damaging Taiwan's relations with the Philippines and Vietnam?
That was political risk analyst Ross Feingold speaking to reporter Rick Liao. A survey in Taiwan shows more men are taking parental leave and more women are moving into male-dominated fields. But women's groups and the survey itself show big areas for improvement. John Van Trieste has this story.
Mr. Lee and his 11-month-old daughter take a stroll on a sunny winter's day. With his wife's maternity leave over, he's taken paternity leave. It's possible thanks to a government subsidy giving new parents 80% of their normal pay. It used to be unusual for men to take paternity leave, but a cabinet report on gender equality says that's changing. In 2020, men accounted for just 18% of those taking parental leave. This year, that's up to 25%. It looks like progress, but some women's groups think it may only be a blip.
这里面的成因可能蛮复杂。第一个是我们政府的政策有一些小小的改变，那再来就是可能当年有疫情上的影响，可能有停托的状况，他需要照顾小孩，所以他就趁那个时候就请了孕假。
And Mr. Lee says that paying the bills on paternity leave is difficult.
我认为其实政府现在的补助对于维持一个家庭的生计是不够的，但是如果公司有办法提供更好的福利，例如说给予全新的给付的话，是会很有帮助的。
The rest of the report is a similar mix of progress and areas for improvement. Globally, it finds Taiwan is 22nd when it comes to the proportion of women in the legislature, well above its Asian neighbors. The country has a woman as its president, and the next vice president is a woman as well. And women are also chipping away at the glass ceiling in male-dominated fields.
这种所谓性别的这种刻板印象，我相信慢慢在解除了。尤其是当少子化，很多家庭就只有一胎的时候，这几个大型的这种科技业的这个企业，他们有自己附设的托儿所，所以这种情况下，多多少少也会鼓励女性去投入这样的行业。
But other metrics, like the proportion of women board members in publicly traded companies, are still lagging. In most fields, women in Taiwan still have to work 58 days more than men to earn the same pay. Even with the progress Taiwan's made, true gender equality is still out of reach. Lofi Lee and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
An environmental group is accusing Taiwan's government of failing to protect people's basic rights and of violating the constitution. Sally Jensen has more.
气候再不留子孙，落实气候时代正义。 For the first time ever, Taiwan's laws are being challenged on a climate change-related issue. The Environmental Rights Foundation is holding a demonstration outside the judicial branch of government in Taipei, and they're saying that the groups and communities most impacted by the climate crisis are not receiving the intergenerational justice that has been promised to them under Taiwan's climate law that came into force around last year.
我们在这里要求政府能够更积极地防止气候变迁，然后进行减碳，避免原住民的部落在强降雨或干旱的影响下受到最严重的生存权。 生存的威胁。
Indigenous people, farmers and children are all represented here as they're the groups most vulnerable to the impacts of the climate crisis, and Taiwan itself is highly vulnerable to these impacts. And they're submitting a petition to the government demanding that the government make short to mid-term goals under its climate law, that's periodic goals between 2026 and 2030, which they hope will help ensure their well-being and the survival of future generations. And the government has not yet responded to their demands or to this demonstration, but the activists here hope that they will spur the government into acting faster on what many here believe to be one of Taiwan's biggest existential threats. Kamashu and Sally Ensign in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan is testing its combat readiness by launching a series of military exercises ahead of the Lunar New Year. Our reporter Jaime Ocon is in southern Taiwan for the start of the drills.
Troops around Taiwan will be holding drills ahead of the Lunar New Year, including at this Air Force base in Pingtung County. They're practicing how to quickly take off and land so that the aircraft can spend as much time as possible in the air. This exercise is supposed to simulate wartime conditions, and these aircraft play a crucial role in gathering information and transportation. China continues to threaten to take over Taiwan. That's why the military is basically demonstrating that while the millions of people travel across Taiwan for the Lunar New Year holiday, that they're ready to go and they're on guard defending Taiwan's sovereignty. Scott Huang and Jaime Ocon in Pingtung Air Force Base for TaiwanPlus.
A railway strike set to cause travel chaos in Taiwan over Lunar New Year has been called off. The Taiwan Railway Union voted to strike during the holiday over alleged unfair pay, but members worry the move could further erode trust in Taiwan's public transportation. The railway union says they will revisit the proposal to go on strike after the holiday if their demands are not met. Coming up, foreign firms weigh in on Taiwan's economy this year. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the most joyous time of the year. It's the Year of the Dragon.
Kind of exciting.
And we're here to make it truly unforgettable for you.
Wow, guys, dig in!
From February 9th to 14th, immerse yourself in a lineup of thrilling shows that promise to keep you entertained throughout the entire celebration. Nothing like an appetizing meal to get started. Indulge in a mouth-watering, delectable feast.
So good.
That will leave you craving for more. And don't miss our musical extravaganza, featuring a range of tunes, from traditional classics to modern beats. But that's not all. Embark on a journey to explore the breathtaking landscapes awaiting your discovery in Taiwan.
You never know what you're going to find, and that's what I've discovered here. Have you noticed? I've never seen that before.
The Lunar New Year is just around the corner. Celebrate it in style with TaiwanPlus.
We wish everybody 龙来运转，大吉大利，
鱼跃龙门. Happy New Year.
Soaring into the Year of the Dragon. TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. North Korea has fired multiple cruise missiles into the sea off its west coast, according to South Korea's military. Seoul reported the launch on Tuesday. It follows 2 other North Korean launches this week and comes amid a period of rising tensions on the peninsula. South Korea says they're working with the US to monitor the situation. Major donor countries have cut funding to the main UN relief agency in Gaza. That's after Israel accused agency staff of taking part in the October 7th attack by Hamas. Louise Watt reports.
Palestinians in war-torn Gaza pick up aid from a UN distribution centre. Many here say this is all that's stopping them from starving. But the UN agency behind this is under pressure. Western countries like the US and Germany have suspended funding, following claims by Israel that agency staff were involved in the October 7th Hamas attacks on Israel that killed 1,200 people and saw the group take more than 250 hostages back to Gaza. Israeli troops have since been bombarding the Strip in response, leaving most of Gaza's population reliant on the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, or UNRWA, for their basic necessities.
أكلنا منها شربنا منها كل حياتنا كلها منها يعني أنا معي سكر معي ضغط من وين علاجي منها.
UNRWA employs 30,000 Palestinians. According to the Israeli government, 13 of them took part in the October attacks against Israel. Some reportedly participated in kidnappings and killings, while others gave logistical support. UNRWA has fired 9 of the staff at the center of the allegations, and the UN is conducting a full investigation.
Any employee involved in acts of terror will be held accountable, including through criminal prosecution.
If its funding is not restored within a month, UNRWA says it will have to stop operations, leaving millions in Gaza without aid.
The countries that have announced this suspension, their aid amounts to 70% of the annual budget of the United Nations Relief and Work Agency. This measure is extremely dangerous, and it is our hope that it will be reversed.
Forced from their homes by months of bombardments, many Gazans have been staying in UNRWA schools and other shelters. The agency says no one else can quickly step in to fill the void if it's forced to stop operations, adding to the uncertainty of those trapped in this conflict. James Lin and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Authorities in Hong Kong have proposed a new local national security law, which critics fear could further erode freedoms in the China-controlled territory. The bill is expected to address offences such as treason and theft of state secrets. Hong Kong's Chief Executive John Lee says it's part of a constitutional responsibility to safeguard against potential sabotage. It mirrors a similar law imposed on Hong Kong by Beijing in 2019 that sparked widespread protests. Many pro-democracy activists have since been arrested or forced into exile. Embattled Chinese real estate giant Evergrande Group has been ordered to liquidate by a Hong Kong court. It comes after the property developer was unable to reach a deal with creditors to restructure the company's $300 billion debt in talks that lasted 19 months. The collapse has left the fate of 1,200 unfinished building projects in jeopardy. Evergrande is one of several Chinese developers that have collapsed since 2020. All were under pressure to rein in surging debt that China sees as a threat to economic growth. A patient has successfully received a Neuralink implant in the first human trial of the chip that connects the brain to computers. Neuralink founder Elon Musk said the initial results were positive and the patient is recovering well. The product, called telepathy, aims to help people with paralysis and neurological conditions to control devices with their thoughts. Confidence in Taiwan's economy is high, according to the American Chamber of Commerce, which has just released its annual business climate survey. Joyce Zhang has a summary.
Foreign companies are staying confident in doing business in Taiwan. Over 200 companies under the American Chamber of Commerce, or AmCham, have said in their in the group's annual survey that they plan to maintain and even increase investments in Taiwan this year. In fact, companies have said that they would invest even more if trade barriers and red tape were removed. These were the areas that companies wish to see improvement in Taiwan. They want to see reduced bureaucratic inefficiencies and also regulations align more with international standards. Now, despite the name, AmCham does represent more than just American companies, but leaders here have said that its members have emphasized a need for more bilateral engagement with the U.S. Last year, the two sides had a milestone agreement. This was the Taiwan-U.S. Initiative on 21st Century Trade. Though this stopped short of being a full free trade agreement, it does make the lives of companies easier in the sense of customs and also border procedures. And with the U.S. headed for a presidential election later this year, AmCham leaders have said that urgency to sign the second part of this agreement is key to keep fueling this optimism in Taiwan's economy. Patrick Chen and Joyce Sun in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Invest in Taiwan. That's what a Taiwanese-American startup founder wants to do. As Leslie Liao reports, her decision was based on her strong connection to the country.
Born and raised in the USA, Olivia Chen has not forgotten her roots in Taiwan.
I was born in the US, but when I was little, I actually had a chance to live there for a year, and that was a transformative year.
Chen and her business partner, Pauline Ang, run a company that sells canned plant-based Taiwanese-style milk tea out of California. Their brand can be found in over 1,000 stores across the U.S. Part of their commitment is using single-origin tea leaves sourced from family-owned farms. Another is working with businesses in Taiwan to make their products. Olivia says she feels compelled by her Taiwanese identity.
The memories, the smells, the fun holidays that I had with my family that allowed me to have this kind of like this connection that you can never break. That's why we worked really hard to find manufacturing in Taiwan. We wanted to find Taiwanese teas. We wanted to find Taiwanese printers and just help that Taiwan in its own way shine.
Olivia makes trips back to Taiwan to check in on the farmers she works with. On this occasion, she's visiting both tea and ube farms to get a better idea of the ingredients that go into her products.
I had always grown up with tea, but actually didn't really understand a lot of the nuances. And one thing I just learned, we have a jasmine pu'er. I did not know that the jasmine flower was handpicked and that these jasmine flowers are then paired with the tea leaves.
She also thinks it's important to connect with her suppliers who share her philosophy.
I'm like so happy that I can cry, honestly. It's incredible to meet a farmer, someone who really cares about the crop.
Businesses like Olivia's also give Taiwan's local farmers a chance to access previously untapped markets.
种这个你有时候遇到瓶颈也是，那个产量也是都在那里而已啊。如果能够把这个市场打开哦。 那个产量，那个市占率比较高啊，我们就可以栽种更多的。
Olivia lives over 12,000 kilometers away from Taiwan, but a strong connection to her roots means that the country is never far away from her heart. And her commitment to delivering her ideal product while finding ways to work with Taiwanese businesses not only helps people here, but also anchors her to a proud sense of history and heritage. Eason Sun and Leslie Liao for TaiwanPlus.
Taipei Zoo has opened a special salamander exhibit to raise awareness about the rare species. Our reporter Irene Lin explains why these tiny amphibians need protection.
Small and slender, these slimy amphibians might be mistaken for lizards, but they're a rare type of salamander. Having traveled across the northern hemisphere 100,000 years ago, they found a new home in Taiwan. And they're the smallest type of salamander out there. But these ancient creatures are facing some modern challenges. Being cold-blooded and having thin skin makes them sensitive to temperature changes, so they've had to adapt to the changing climate.
它因为栖地在高山上面那面临我们的气候暖化的问题，所以它的栖地呢一直不断的受到了一些威胁。
Researchers from National Taiwan University say many of the riverbeds salamanders rely on have dried up, posing another threat. But humans are also posing a risk to the tiny creatures. Researchers say people hiking and camping in the mountains and by the rivers have affected their habitats and made it harder for them to survive.
现在登山客多了，然后像刚刚我讲的，动不动然后去翻个石头，事实上对他来讲就是一个非常严重的栖地的干扰哈。
The government aims to shed light on the plight of these tiny creatures, so people know how to have outdoor adventures that do not disturb the world around them, in the hopes that these salamanders can remain at home in Taiwan. Ryan Wu and Irene Lin for TaiwanPlus.
Birdwatchers have been getting up close and personal with a flock of cormorants which have returned to northern Taiwan for the winter.
要在我们北部，尤其在我们这种都会型的区域里面，又是人口这么多的地方，我们可以看得到鸬鹚。讲真的，可能世界上找不到说像我们这么的方便，这么的容易去亲近那个鸬鹚。
Cormorants are a migratory bird known for their deep diving skills, which they use to catch fish. They journey from Russia and northeast China to spend the colder months in Taiwan. But just 10 years ago, they weren't seen in northern Taiwan at all. The completion of a large reservoir and improved water quality keeps this flock of 1,000 cormorants coming back every year. Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, we leave you with images of a festival where circus artists brought their performances to the streets of Granada in Nicaragua. I'm Inka Vat. Take care and see you next time.